Evening, folks. Brian here, Geomagnetic Earthwatch on Sunday, February 5, 2023 on our planet. Hope you're all well. Let's see if I can finish this video without any interruptions, any earthquake interruptions. So we talk a lot about the geomagnetic excursion, pole shift. Right. And we're forgetting about one very important thing, which will soon be upon us before the expected acceleration point leading to a catastrophic event. We have three things that's going to be happening on our planet. We have the continuation of the geomagnetic excursion resulting in the weakening of our protective magnetosphere and the effects of cosmic rays and ultraviolet radiation on the planet and us humans. One. We have the approach of the NASA-confirmed Planet X, or Planet Xena, the 10th planet, approaching our solar system and its gravitational and magnetic effects on our planet. However, we have something that happens on a more regular cyclical basis, and that is the grand solar minimum of our sun. And I will simplify it for those who are new to the subject of grand solar minimum. So the grand solar minimum is a period of inactivity from our sun. Basically, it goes into a state of hibernation with minimal or no solar output to heat the planets, including planet Earth. Now, our sun has a standard 11-year solar cycle. When it starts off with the absolute minimum of sunspot activity, the measurement of how active and how warm our sun is based on the number of sunspot counts, sunspot activity. It'll start off at a solar minimum period, work up to its maximum intensity of energy for 4.5 years, remains at solar maximum for a couple of years, and descends back down into solar minimum. That time period in between is on average of 11 years. Some solar periods have been as long as 13.5 years. One or two have been as short as 9 years. But the average is 11 years, solar cycle, pardon me. Now, a grand solar minimum cycle is a period of several consecutive solar cycles with minimal or no sunspot activity. So the last grand minima was called the Dalton minimum from 1790 to 1830. However, the true last grand solar minimum, called the Maunder minimum, was between 1645 to 1715, otherwise known as the Little Ice Age, where the British River Thames froze over, for example. Grand solar minimum is not just about the world freezing over. That's the main misconception a lot of people have. So, how do we know when we're going into a grand solar minimum period? Is when we have 3 consecutive 11-year solar cycles, each falling in decline. So we are currently in the middle of solar cycle 25, 24 was a little bit stronger, 23 was a little bit stronger, 22 was a little bit stronger. So we've been on a gradual decline. So when we have 3 consecutive solar cycles, each decreasing in strength from the previous one, that tells us we're on our way into a grand solar minimum cycle. Expected to start or really get into it at around 2030. However, remember I said some solar cycles are as short as 9 years. So we're now reaching solar maximum. We don't know if we're going to have a gradual fun roller coaster ride to 2030, or we could have a very sharp drop off falling arc of rock. We could be getting into it at around 2028, grand solar minimum. Now, several things happen when our sun, both during the 11-year solar minimum period, there's a 200-year grand minimum cycle and a 400-year grand solar minimum cycle. Several things happen. Our sun's own magnetic field, or heliosphere, shrinks and weakens. Normally it expands to encompass and protect all of the solar system planets, including our planet, protecting us from the cosmic rays, the galactic cosmic rays coming in. So during solar minimum, deep solar minima, and grand solar minimum periods, our protection given to us from the sun drastically weakens. Therefore, we have an increase in notable earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, increased cloud nuclei, increased cloud cover, atmospheric compression forcing those clouds lower. So let's get into some examples of notable earthquakes during the Maunder minimum. So on January 26, the year 1700 was the last Cascadia subduction zone megathrust earthquake, estimated to have been a 9+ earthquake from Northern California all the way to the north end of Vancouver Island. And in fact, the Japanese, who maintained very good records during that time period, recorded the tsunami reaching their lands on that date. During the Dalton minimum, April 15th, the year 1815, we had the Tambora volcanic eruption and a continuation in its eruptive phase, spewing so much volcanic ash into the stratosphere, which resulted in the following year, called the Year Without Summer, 1816, in which there was so much volcanic ash in the northern hemisphere, sunlight couldn't get through, massive crop failures, famine, lots of deaths. Also during the Dalton minimum period, at the end of 1811, we had a pair of 8+ earthquakes, New Madrid. We had another 2 the following year, the beginning of 1812. Therefore, folks, during grand solar minimum periods, we can expect an uptick of catastrophic earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. At the same time, our magnetosphere is already weakened, is going to continue to lose strength. At the same time, we're going to have those grand solar minimum induced catastrophic earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. So during grand solar minimum periods, it's not just about parts of the planet freeze over. No. They are noted by storms, hurricanes, cyclones, typhoons, downpours, snowstorms, flash floods, tornadoes, hail events. We haven't had a hail event for a while. Global cooling, lightning events, and again, increase in volcanoes and earthquakes. Now, the secondary showering particles of the cosmic rays act as cloud nuclei by ionization and propagating low-level cloud formation, atmospheric compression, forces those clouds down. Sunlight doesn't get in. Our crops don't grow. Now, again, some of those cosmic rays reach the surface and increasing the intensity of everything I just mentioned in our storms, in our hail events, in our flash flooding events, in our lightning events, etc. Now, NASA, a couple of years ago, they released a paper, an article, confirming that we would be going into a cooling period not seen since 200 years ago. NASA subsequently removed that article from their website. So when you see an article from a government website, take your smartphone and take a screenshot of it, save it. Because they got rid of all traces of that article that they issued out, forewarning us of going into a grand solar minimum period by 2030. Now, let's not forget that the man-made global warming narrative was created to distract us from the real reasons of the upcoming Earth changes, such as the weather events. Created to cover up how a foreign external large planetary body coming into our solar system will affect us gravitationally. It's also a nice cover story for the coming grand solar minimum. Also, common during grand solar minimum periods is, so basically what we have is we have a longer, extended, colder winter, such as we're having now, and a shorter, hotter summers. Heat domes are common during grand solar minimum periods, as well as droughts. The Great London Fire during the Maunder minimum was because everything was so dry. Well, that's how and why the Great London Fire, everything burned so readily. So we have droughts caused by grand solar minimum. We're in a 1,200-year drought pattern, as well as the increased cosmic rays and ultraviolet radiation coming in and sucking the moisture out. You get a triple whammy, folks. So where I'm going to in leading in this talk, most importantly, is the failure to grow enough food for the existing global population, along with the obvious orchestrated destruction of our food supply systems. The culling of millions of our chickens affecting our egg production. Well over 100 food-related production plants in the United States mysteriously burning down and blowing up. And not just in the United States. As well as, again, we're in a 1,200-year drought cycle, not enough water for our crop irrigation. And the effects of cosmic radiation and increased UVC, sucking the moisture out of everything. So when I talk about preparedness, you need to seriously think about the coming grand solar minimum and start preparing for that. And the notable earthquakes and volcanic eruptions associated with grand solar minimums before we get into an acceleration point of the geomagnetic excursion and pole flip. I'm sorry to break the bad news to you folks. My personal research actually started 6 years ago with the grand solar minimum cycles. It just developed as I became aware of the magnetic excursion, the 12,000-year cycle, the geomagnetic excursion of our planet. And the NASA confirmed incoming Planet 10. You're going to get it all, kids. Whole bunch. But the main thing is food. 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 Our inability to keep up and grow enough for everybody. And my great fear is, and I've been watching very closely the changing season, and part of grand solar minimum is changing the climate changes, the weather events that can also destroy our food crops. 2 years ago in Iowa, one farmer lost 200 acres of his corn crop in 10 minutes from a freak flash hail event. These are all associated with ground solar minimum periods coming in. So we have problems with increased ultraviolet radiation coming in, changing the DNA not only in human but in our plants, reducing the quality, quantity, and size of our vegetables. We have our changing growing season and grow zones. Those hardy grow zones, throw them in the garbage. They don't mean nothing anymore because everything has to be shifted south. So yeah, I just want to talk about ground solar minimum, and a lot of people seem to forget about that. It's being overshadowed by all the pole shift talk. Yeah, it's important. It really is. But we're going to be getting into a altered state, climate state, and a cooling phase because our sun is about to go to sleep for a long time, for approximately 70 years. And again, into a state of reduced solar output and dropping its shields, leaving us more exposed to the galactic cosmic rays. And I have to think about the recent 8.1 earthquakes in Turkey that just happened a couple hours ago. It's going to take a lot of time to figure out that one, but me personally, you heard me speak of mantle plumes agitation. But that's just the beginning, folks. 8.1, that's small compared to what we're going to be getting. And here in North America, we haven't been hit yet. And these are some of the things that you need to start thinking about and preparing for. Not just for the eventuality of the governments and the elite setting us up for future lockdowns. So when you're thinking about relocating and finding a safe location, and stop paying attention to that stupid global flood map, because all he used was a sea level rise program. That's all it was, which instilled unnecessary fear and panic in a lot of people. If it's going to happen that way by his timeline, mid to late 2030s to 2040s, I'm sorry, kids, but we're going to be well into a grand solar minimum cycle by then. Yes, get off the coastlines, at least 500 kilometers away. Yes, get at elevation, at least 100 feet away. Yes, make sure you're not near any volcanic regions, and make sure you're not on any major fault lines either. Make sure you're near a river system, preferably glacial Fred for freshwater circulation, etc., etc., etc. Don't be worrying too much about which way the crust may or may not slip, or, the planet. It doesn't matter where you are. Because we're going to have a series of events before then. And today's earthquake in Turkey is one example. The mantle plume action below Australia and the surrounding areas. Papua New Guinea, Indonesia. Two recent examples. 7.8 there in the Banda Sea. And then the following 7.2 or 7.4 north in the Salibi Sea, north of Sulawesi. This 8.1 now in Turkey. And pay attention to the antipode response to New Zealand, please. So anyway, I just want to give you a little bit of talk about ground solar minimum cycles. the last 400 year, and it's actually between 350 and 400 year cycle. And we are now due for the next period. At the very least, a Dalton minimum type grand minima. And back then, during the Tambora explosion, there was only 1 billion people on the planet. We now have 8 billion people, along with the orchestrated destruction of our food supply systems. Chickens, eggs, they're going after the beef. There's bird flu that's going to shut everything down. And pay attention to food recalls. Do you really think they're real? Do you really think all these food recalls are real? And I'm just going to veer off subject while I got you still here 21 minutes. Something else to pay attention to. As I do when you go grocery shopping, and I try and stay away from processed food, but when you go to the bakeries, for example, muffins, the more loss of our natural foods we have, the more artificial, chemical ingredients are going to be going into our food. The more chemicals that's going to be going into our food and into our bodies. I stay away from it. You want blueberry muffins? Well, these look like blueberry muffins. Are they real or are they chemical? Flavored and colored. Chemical this, chemical that. You're going to find a lot more of artificial ingredients in our food. And bugs. That's all for now, folks. I think this is going to be my last video for the evening. Unless something else pops off on our planet. Hope you enjoyed this talk.